Right, hey guys, how we doing? Back in another video from Annie News, continuing with ReZero cut content, and today we are checking out Al's secret power we didn't get to see, fighting Lost. What a fight, very interesting. Get to see that Al's very capable, still very curious about who he is, but don't spoil it! I have my own theories. But yeah, let's see what was left out.
Capella versus Al was a fight shrouded with quite a bit of mystery. Zero progress was made figuring out how to get rid of her, and somehow Al came out completely unscathed. If
Yeah, dude's capable.
you're anime only, you may think that's simply due to Al being an incredible fighter, but what the novel hints at is something deeper.
Oh.
It doesn't outright tell you what it is, but the numerous clues make it extremely obvious. So let's just say Subaru might not be the only one with a special ability. That's the biggest difference from the fight we saw, and it's a core part of what I'll be talking about in this video. Let's get started. To start things off here in Crush's recovery room, Capella began by commenting on how disappointed she was in her. For someone possessing as much noble blood as herself, it was a shame she lost in her battle to the Dragon Blood. Of course, Felix only wanted answers, but the questions he asked certainly weren't going to be answered by her. No. Instead, Capella took this opportunity to mess with him, transforming into Crush, then taunting him into trying to kill her.
Yeah, she's weird.
This was significantly more stressful than what we saw in the anime, since rather than strike Capella while she was in her original form, Felix instead had to muster the courage to do so while she was Crush.
Oh, mate, that is so much more interesting. Whoa.
There wasn't any particular reason as to why Capella was doing this, other than to kill time and check out a relationship she found rather intriguing. She did, however, slip that she was searching for what she described as collectibles, so that was going on in between all this little fun of hers. Now, it was when Felix was being held against the wall that he would actually fight back in a way that we didn't get to see in the anime. Somehow, when he was being pinned here, Felix had managed to explode Capella's arm in a way that shocked even her.
Oh.
Compared to the damage she'd taken in all her other fights, what Felix did here was fundamentally different. His attack had caused Capella's arm to wither away into nothing.
Yo.
It's before Felix would get a chance to explain what that was, though, that Anastasia would then step in to scorch Capella's face next. It was the next step of a trap she set up, knowing full well Capella would come here. Knowing just how terrible of a person she was, Anastasia was able to read Capella like a book. She had leveraged the merchant tactics she normally used for negotiations, then applied them here to predict this as the route Capella would take. This was one of the core practices of being a merchant, since winning there often meant not letting your opponent do what they want, all while managing to do what you want. So it was essentially the same concept, just applied to the battlefield. Needless to say, Capella wasn't very happy, but before she could transform Anastasia into the worm she envisioned for her, she would instead find herself falling all the way down to the sewer network.
Bye.
It's here we get to see the true fight begin, bringing us to the showdown between her, the Archbishop of Lust, and Al. Much of their initial conversation was exactly as how we saw in the anime, except Capella would be a lot more heavy-handed with her provocations.
Al's
She would
so
start with the
cool.
typical lust-filled comments that she usually did, only to get shut down as Al wasn't willing to go along with them. His approach was far different to those who Capella was fighting up above. I mean, the guy really sold the idea that he didn't want to be there right now. Al then tried to blame her for such an inconvenience, leading Capella to point out all the things that weren't her fault, specifically the flooding of the city and the murder of those on the council. Al would of course deny any involvement, but Capella's attitude towards that led him to realize something about her was different. You see, in comparison to the archbishops he'd met before, the way she acted just wasn't the same somehow. Capella would then refer to each of her acquaintances in the most vulgar way possible, confirming the notion none of them were allies. Shortly after, she would
Yeah,
make her first
she sees herself as above them all. I kind of get the vibe of.
attempt at courtship, since no matter how much she was pushed away, Capella was the type of person to fixate on a love that persevered through everything. It was a one-sided desire to steal every bit of affection from someone, her own twisted perception of true love. It's for this reason she's able to transform into the ideal form others prefer, since that's her way of expressing that love. She's able to see a person for everything they are on the outside, then devotes her entire being to satisfying the subtle needs that person expressed. Yes, it is technically exactly what that person desires, but the main problem with that is that it's only superficial.
Yeah, it's not
On the
what's
surface,
inside.
this may have been everything Al wanted, but it was the farthest thing from true love anyone could imagine. Now, Al's continued rejection would eventually lead to Capella's pursuit and her subsequent decapitation, where you might be wondering, what about her blood? Well, Al was well aware of the potential effects of getting any of that dragon blood on him,
Okay.
but that didn't stop him from walking right into it. Despite that blood showering everywhere from the stump neck he just created, zero hesitation was shown when it came to delivering the potentially fatal blow to
I
him.
didn't even think about that. He's just going in, not caring. Yeah, okay.
It seemed he just didn't care what may come of it. So, Al would first carve out Capella's heart from her headless body, then explode the rest just like how we saw in the anime. The entire sequence was a three-pronged attack, each more lethal than the last. Even Capella was shocked by how mercilessly Al decided to treat her, leading her to ask if hurting people was an expression of his love. It's then that Al could only look on in aggravation as the rest of Capella's body regenerated from just her head. She didn't even need the parts Al painted the walls with, so whatever organs and blood remained there simply melted away into nothing. Capella was, however, curious as to why Al wasn't avoiding her blood, and that led to a response that was rather interesting. You see, though he didn't say anything entirely specific, he did mention how he was already aware Capella's blood wasn't a poison activated by simple contact. It was a fact he learned by trying to dodge it before.
Oh.
This was a peculiar answer for Capella to hear herself, since from what she could remember, Al hadn't tried to dodge anything. It was then that Al would mention how that was from a time she wouldn't know about, possibly referring to something that's much, much bigger than this. It could also be a statement referring to anything, but considering all the similar clues that come next, it's very unlikely that such odd statements would all be coincidence. In any case, the most important thing was that the neck, heart, and body weren't Capella's weak spots. That left only the head, but the thought of continuing the fight left Al exhausted. He was very much over this fight that he didn't want to deal with, along with something else that seemed to be bothering him. Though it's not explicitly mentioned in the anime, it's clear from the beginning something a bit more discreet is weighing heavily on Al too. It's yet another mystery adding to the many currently surrounding him. It's then that the fight would continue, much to Al's displeasure, since not only was he starting to get exhausted, after the 20th lethal wound, Capella still showed zero signs of weakness. She had recovered from each exactly the same as all the others. Chunks of her body would simply melt away into nothing, while the core would regenerate no problem. Capella would then ask how many more times it would take before he'd actually kill her, a question to which Al would answer with yet another peculiar response. You see, in addition to saying he wasn't sure if even 100 deaths would allow him to do it, he also added how he was already pushing 50. That's right, Al stated bluntly that he'd died almost 50 times already. Now, this could just be hyperbole, but considering his previous statement and the fact those words don't even make sense, it's starting to seem like Al may have powers similar to what Subaru does.
Yeah, like, my theory is that he is Subaru from the future, and this is one of his loops that he's in. Or something like that. I want it to be something really interesting like that. Don't you dare tell me. Don't you dare tell me.
I mean, how else would he have survived such prolonged battles against such powerful opponents? He even mentions dying like it's some event he's very much familiar with. In any case, the subsequent trap which would leave Capella crushed was what she considered an act of love due to how thoughtful it was. The way everyone spent so much time plotting all this for her reinforced her twisted belief that giving attention was the sole way of expressing their love. So, as the tunnel caved in and her body flattened, the only thing Capella could think about was how all this was for her. She couldn't help but blush knowing so much attention
She's
was
so
given to her.
weird.
Now, as much of a hindrance as having one arm was, Al could actually swim quite well. The only problem was his helmet, but considering Anastasia was there waiting for him after, he couldn't take it off to empty the water inside of it. Once again, Al would hint at some untimely deaths during the process of his escape, then proceed to recount his battle of attrition with Lust. Anastasia's magic would trigger some sort of red flag with Al, then Capella would enter the scene showing she was just fine. This much we got to see in the anime, but what we didn't see after was Al's inner thoughts taking the situation more seriously than usual. You see, for Al, Capella's power was the worst possible matchup for him. He doesn't explain why he thought that, but he did mention how it would have been better if she just came here to kill them. To him, the worst possible outcome was getting turned into flies or something. It's a threat I assume is dangerous to him for the same reason it's dangerous to Subaru. Luckily, Capella was done with what she had to do, so the three of them wouldn't have to fight like their lives depended on it. And that would be the end to their confrontation with Lust. I wish I could explain more the influence of the gospel on her, but as Capella said herself, that was simply a guiding tool for her.
Right.
The decisions she made were hers alone to make. She still had the freedom to choose her own course. Now, how Anastasia knew about it is a completely different question, but I'm very much curious as to why Al was so on the fence about her. There's clearly something else in play between the both of them, and that's part of the story I'm very excited to see come to life hopefully next season. But anyway, that's pretty much it for this fight. It wasn't the longest in terms of content, but it was certainly the most anticlimactic since no conclusion was given for anyone. Capella simply retreated and Al remains a mystery. The hints we got were quite telling though, so at the very least it's incredibly likely he possesses some sort of looping ability as well.
I'm sorry, I've only just realized something here. So, this is going to be so dumb. I always move, right, you can only see part of the mouse. I always move the mouse over here and leave it, hoping that that's going to drop so I can see the full picture better without all that. I did not know until now that if I just click, it disappears, and then I can just... Unreal. Anyway, sorry.
Was so on the fence about her. There's clearly something else in play between the both of them, and
insane.
That's part of the story I'm very excited to see come to life hopefully next season. But anyway, that's pretty much it for this fight. It wasn't the longest in terms of content, but it was certainly the most anticlimactic since no conclusion was given for anyone. Capella simply retreated and Al remains a mystery. The hints we got were quite telling though, so at the very least it's incredibly likely he possesses some sort of looping ability as well. We just don't know to what extent. But yeah, that's pretty much it for that, so if you liked the video then leave a like, and if you want to see more then feel free to subscribe. You can find all the other fights down in the description below. Now, until next time.
Ciao. Cool. Very interesting. I can't believe I just learned that now. That is... so silly. Very interesting. Very, very cool stuff. And I think there's one more, maybe two. Regardless, as they come out, we check them out. Love it. And thank you very much for watching.